Am I live? Hello? I don't know. Let's say I am. Hi, everyone watching currently and everyone who might be watching later. I am live streaming today because I want to talk about, well, pretty much anything and everything. Specifically, I want to be talking about the work in progress I have that I keep mentioning in videos but haven't really talked at length about yet. Oh, and yeah, thanks guys in the chat for clarifying that I am in fact streaming. Let me just give me a second while I just open this up myself so I can check it. Okay. Alright. Okay, so, if you guys have any questions for me at any point, just go ahead in the chat, but otherwise I'm just gonna go ahead and start telling you about what I've got going on at the moment. So, I've mentioned a few times I'm currently working on... I'm not exactly sure what I would clarify the genre as right now, but I'm thinking it would probably fall into being a psychological horror. I was saying psychological thriller, but I think it falls more into the horror genre, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I want to tell you a short synopsis of what it is first, and then I'll go into depth about what it is, and give you a really good idea of what it is, tell you what inspired it, a little bit about the characters that I have so far, and we'll go from there. Nothing for a midnight drink, rather like iced tea. Hi everyone in the chat. Hello, Endrit. Just gonna say hi there as well. Okay. So, what I'm writing currently, I'll tell you a short synopsis first, is it would be basically about a middle-aged man who has hit rock bottom in his life and he isn't a good guy. So the story I want to write starts with someone who you wouldn't consider a hero, someone you wouldn't look up to, someone who has to learn through the layers of hell, which will make more sense in a moment, just why he isn't as good of a person as he thinks he is. He's hit rock bottom, and basically he blames everyone else but himself. And it centralizes around a character named Joseph Ridley, who is a pretty normal middle-aged guy, and he's a limo driver. And one day he drives a really intense and mysterious individual, and that's kind of when things go downhill. And the very next day when he wakes up, the story's set over the course of 7 days, and it's meant to be a whole thing. So the working title I have at the moment is Descent 7, because the idea is that through having the 7 layers of hell brought to his front door, he's learning... God, it's just really hard to explain at this point in time, but through the 7 layers of hell, he's learning about why the actions he's taken in the past have had such a negative impact on other people's lives, and in turn have had an impact on his. So basically the story is set around one really big event that happened in his life that just fucked everything up, and you don't actually learn what that event specifically is until the end of the story. But it'll be set over 7 days, and each day he'll go through one of the 7 layers of hell. So it's set all within his apartment building, and basically this massive storm rolls through the city that he lives in and traps everyone inside the building. And through the course of the story, the storm gets worse and worse to the point of being supernaturally bad. And he's trapped in this apartment building, and each day he has to venture a bit further outside of his room to try and escape the building, but obviously it's not that easy. And every day, one of the layers of hell is represented by one of his neighbors. Just gonna check the chat. So when I talk about the 7 layers of hell, I'm talking about stuff like lust. What were the other ones? I think there was like lust, wrath, greed, etc. You know the ones I'm talking about. But each layer has with it an event from his past that you learn about through each chapter. So, for example, on the day in which is represented by greed, he has to face an event from his past in which his greed negatively impacted someone else's life. And the way that horror comes into it is because it's quite inspired by stories like Stephen King's Room 1408. I wanted a really claustrophobic horror story, something that you feel that the character's very trapped where he is, and the people he's trapped with are originally they're human, but during the storm they don't feel like they're human. And that'll probably take a very physical representation. Like, I'm thinking at the moment, rather than just acting kind of demonic, I'm going to have them look quite demonic as well, the neighbors that are representing the layers of hell. I probably made it sound super confusing, and I'm sorry about the noise outside, by the way. I probably made it sound super confusing at the moment, but I'll try and summarize it a bit better in a moment. Hi again, everyone in the chat so far. Hey, Jordan, and Kevin, and Clay, and Naz. And for the record, I'm learning piano, but let me show you what I'm learning right now, because you'll be thoroughly underwhelmed. I'm starting really easy, starting with Disney. I'm starting with Just Can't Wait to Be King, but I'm not going to give a live example. It's too late at night for that. Let me close this window as well. Hopefully that should help with the noise. Okay, so I feel like I did a really bad job explaining that story. I'm going to try and do that again, just a bit more simple. So, main character, Joseph Ridley, middle-aged man, lives in an apartment building. He's divorced. He has a son that he doesn't see anymore. He lives in an apartment building. His life's hit rock bottom. He blames everyone else but himself. He's a limo driver. At the start of the story, you learn that there is a massive storm rolling through the city that he's in. Everyone's kind of panicking about it, grabbing all the stuff that they would need to be shut in for a week or 2 weeks or so. The story really kicks off when the storm arrives, and he realizes that he's kind of trapped in the building he's in. And that's where I'm trying to build the claustrophobic feeling that 1408 by Stephen King had. And basically, each day when he wakes up, the story feels more and more supernatural and more claustrophobic, because although he'll venture outside of his apartment, he'll encounter his neighbors that he's encountered plenty of times, but this time when he encounters them one by one each day, through 7 neighbors, he'll realize that they are not themselves. They have become demons, representing one of the 7 layers of hell, and with each layer of hell he is confronting something he's done in his past that messed up someone else's life. And all of it is connected to one big event that you learn about at the end of the story. And that's basically it. And It's going to be really quite gory. This Joseph Ridley, the main guy, he's going to really take a beating through the book. I want him to really get messed up, and I haven't even decided if he's going to survive or not. But it's meant to be kind of psychological horror, which is also a love letter to the human condition, in that I wanted to write a story kind of giving a physical representation of me wondering how someone would really deal with an event like that if they weren't your classic hero who does everything for everyone else. He's a prick at the start. He's quite homophobic. I wouldn't say racist, but he's just very selfish. All he cares about is himself. So yeah, that's the idea of the story. Yeah, Seven. That's another one I meant to mention. Thanks, Jordan. It is quite inspired by Seven as well, in that it's meant to be quite mysterious, and obviously inspired by the Seven, the big Seven again. But yeah. I can say one thing, it's a big shift from writing fantasy / adventure like I've normally done. And I was like halfway through writing the third book in the Architects of the Gifted series when I got this idea, and I just couldn't shelf it. I needed to write this because I feel like I've been kind of stuck with the Architects of the Gifted because I'm noticing a lot of issues with the story so far, and that's okay, and I will finish it, of course, but for the time being, I wanted to really write something new and something that I could really challenge myself with, because this isn't a YA. This is a very adult book, and I want it to be written as such. I'm hoping it's, quality-wise, I'm hoping it's an adult. Jacob's Ladder. I haven't seen Jacob's Ladder. I might look that up. And as far as how many words I'm aiming for, sorry, just 1 second. As far as how many words I'm aiming for, see, that's a tricky thing, because in my usual writing style, you might know that I'm quite fast-paced, and with fast-paced stories, you'll usually have shorter, more rapid chapters. So a lot of short chapters, and that's how Architects of the Gifted is, but with this one, it is a very slow burn. You're dealing with a very, very small cast of characters. You might even say you're dealing with one character, because the others aren't really characters so much, they won't get any depth or anything like that. They're more props than they are characters, so you're dealing with one character. It needs to be a really slow burn. So I've noticed already that the chapters are much, much longer, which has been a challenge, but I'm cool with that. It's a really fun experience. It's not the first thing I've written with a kind of, with the intention of being scary. I have done that short story that isn't available right now because I was hoping to turn it into a proper novella, but you might remember I did a story called The Girl in My Nightmare, based on my own experiences with sleep paralysis in a fictional setting with a fictional character. And obviously, I don't know, that's a hard story to explain, but it was a short story that was about 10,000 words, and I felt like there were some parts in there that were pretty scary, but yeah, I'm hoping to turn that into an actual novella, probably about the 40 to 50,000 words. I can tell you a little bit about that one, but that's not really going to be done anytime soon. But The Girl in My Nightmare is essentially taking you through the life from boyhood to young adulthood of a guy who, he was named Charlie. I don't know if he still will, but it was about a boy, Charlie, who deals with crippling sleep paralysis, which I didn't have nearly as bad as the character, but I did deal with for quite a lot, quite a while. And, a lot of people do have this from time to time, but I had it quite extensively for a period, to the point where I needed to actually see a specialist, because it was like every single night. And I wouldn't sleep most nights because I was so scared of it. But the story of The Girl in My Nightmare is basically about this boy Charlie who deals with, that, and then in turn that sets off a number of other things like insomnia, abuse of sleeping medication, etc., etc. And it's meant to be about the human subconscious kind of building a defense to stuff like a sleeping disorder. And in the story, just because the easiest way to represent that was to have an actual character, which was the girl that is inside of his nightmares, which not many people realized while they were reading that story, but the girl is a manifestation of his subconscious that is meant to protect him from the sleep paralysis that is represented as an actual kind of shadow being, which is a real thing and inspired by a lot of real life research and accounts from people who dealt with crippling sleep paralysis would mention, and you might have even experienced it yourself, where you wake up and you can't move and there's like a shadowy figure in the door. That's what it was inspired by. Thoughts on a title? Well, maybe you can tell me what you think, but for the one I was talking about before with, the 7 layers of hell, that was, well, the working title for that currently is Descend 7. I don't know about that one though. Descend 7. I think it sounds kind of cool, kind of mysterious, but I don't know. It's a working title. I just watched your video. You should consider re-record it. I could barely hear anything. Which video are you referring to there, Rafe? Are you talking about the stream? Can everyone hear me okay? I swear I just tested it. It sounded alright. Yeah, so with the short story, part of the reason the short story Girl in My Nightmare, part of the reason that I'm turning it into a longer story is because I don't feel like I really did justice to the conditions of, debilitating kind of sleep paralysis and ongoing nightmares, that kind of stuff. I mean, I did a lot of research, but obviously because it was a short story, it's hard to focus on developing a character that you're writing about through childhood, teenagehood, and adulthood, while also giving justice to the sleep disorder itself. So I felt like I needed more of a story to be able to do that. Thanks, guys. But yeah, that's what I'm dealing with currently as far as stories go. I've written maybe like 2 chapters of Descend 7 so far, which doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, I'm talking about a book that ultimately is probably going to only be like 7 or 8 chapters. So I think that's about actually I can check here. I'm at about the 15k words mark currently, which is pretty good. I was thinking it would be cool to have it like drop on Halloween, but I just don't think that's going to be possible. Does anyone have any questions, anything like that? Anything I can answer for you? It can be about anything, Booktube, writing, reading, whatever. Hello from Italy. Hi, Italy. Oh, hi, Abel from Italy. I have done NaNoWriMo 2 years now, so ever since I started Booktube, I actually started Booktube just before NaNoWriMo in 2016. I started on my birthday, which was August 31st, 2016, and I joined NaNoWriMo the first year, and I can't remember if I won or not, but I did it, and I loved it, and I tried to do it last year, and I think I just finished the right amount, or maybe I didn't. Either way, I tried it last year, and it didn't go nearly as well. It did not go good at all. I'm going to market my book everywhere, but mostly it'll be marketed on, well, my YouTube channel, I guess. Leading up to me finishing Descent 7, I'm probably going to try and hype it up as much as possible. Bonnie's good. I wanted to have her in the stream at least to make an appearance, but she's sleeping under my bed at the moment, so I'm going to take that as I can get it because she has been insane lately. She started doing this thing where she sprints from one end of the apartment to the other as quick as she can, and I'm almost certain that she is doing this thing on purpose where she's like running as fast as she can, but she's sliding her feet on purpose to make the sound. It's really fucking annoying. Do I have a lot of girls hitting me up? Not as much as some people tend to think. You know, funnily enough, most of the people who say, let's say, flattering things about me are in the comments section of Clara's videos that I was in from like a year ago. Clara reads books. She still sends me screenshots of people saying thirsty or seedy things about me on there, which is funny. Like, I don't care. Whatever. Currently, I am not reading any authors because I just finished my month of reading everything that Veronica Roth has done, and I know I'm just a bit book fatigued. 5 books in a month is a lot for me, so just taking a break. When I jump back into it, I'm thinking I might start reading some more of the Joe Hill stuff I haven't read, or Blake Crouch stuff I haven't read, because I want to get myself really into that psychological horror/thriller mindset to help me finish Descent 7. And I come up with the title for my stories well and truly after I've started on them. Well and truly. Fleshing out characters is very, very difficult. Extremely difficult, especially when you've got a big cast, because in the first Architect's book, it's a pretty small cast. I wanted just... well, it wasn't really inspired by it, but I compare it to, you know, the Final Fantasy 15, I think it is. I was after the same kind of mood that game set out, which was just this small band of guys who go on this adventure and become brothers through that. But in the later Architect's books, the cast gets much, much bigger, and I've found it pretty difficult to flesh out all of the characters in that sense. So I'm thankful that for Descent 7, there's pretty much only one character, really. Well, actually, there's 2. So there's Joseph Ridley, and I knew I needed, for that story, I needed another character who wasn't so much a demonic presence that can show up in the middle or towards the end, that is the character that you think is going to save the day. And that took the shape of the... what do you call them? Concierge of the apartment building that the main character lives in. So he's a teenage... he's meant to be kind of like comedic relief. He's a teenage guy. I don't know how important it is for you to know it, but he's a teenage guy. I was thinking like African American. I don't know. I'm trying to... Obviously, it's a really hard story to get proper representation into because there's so few characters. But I figure it's a part that representation could be used in. So. So his characters aren't demons technically. It's hard for me to explain, and it would be a lot easier to understand when you're reading the story itself, but basically it's kind of, I keep saying it's a claustrophobic story, so you got to consider it as when the storm is happening, it's kind of self-contained. Like everything that happens during the storm kind of doesn't exist after the storm finishes. So before the storm, you kind of meet a few of his neighbors and they're just normal people. But during the storm, that's when they are the demons, I guess. No, I don't. I don't try to race Bonnie when she does that because I don't want to encourage her. Dante's Inferno. See, that's another one I was thinking of. I'm glad you said that because, yes, definitely inspired by Dante's Inferno, which I think is an absolutely fantastic story, absolutely fantastic video game if you played it. But yeah, definitely inspired by Dante's Inferno. I'm glad someone said that. I do get stuck in a loop of research, especially nowadays, which is a good thing, mind you, but nowadays there's a strong focus from the reading community to make sure that you do your research when you're talking about stuff that is culturally important to people. So yes, getting stuck in a loop of researching can be a deep hole, because obviously when you try to research something, you're going to find a lot of different sources that can contradict each other. That's a hard thing. Like you'll find two different places that are saying different things about the thing that you're trying to put in your story, and then you end up sitting there like, shit, well, what if I say the wrong thing, and blah blah blah. I think it's important to just remember that you're taking inspiration from this stuff rather than actually doing that stuff in your story. Well, for me anyway. Hi, Emma. In terms of self-publishing or traditional publishing, I've said it quite a few times in other videos, but it does come down to you. So I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it really does matter your situation. But I have a video on that, luckily. So if you go to YouTube search bar when you get a chance and just write in self-publishing versus traditional publishing, it should be one of the first that come up. You'll see my stupid face, but I give a breakdown on all the pros and cons of self-publishing and traditional publishing, so it should give you a good idea of which is the best option for you. Oh, Endrit already actually answered that. Thanks, Endrit. My books are on Amazon, yep. Just search Cam Wolf, or you can go to wolfshoppublishing.com and it'll be under the books tab. Well, look, you can send me a digital copy of your book if you want, but look, when I say that, I do not, I make it my mission to not promise people that I'll read their book, because I'm a little bit different from other Booktube channels. Not trying to say I'm special or anything, in that I don't push myself to read as a lot of other booktubers do. I read when I want to read, and usually that's when I see a story that sparks my interest. So while I'm sure I would read your story eventually, I'm not going to make any promises about when that would be, but you're very welcome to, absolutely. Hi Lucy, I do outline extensively. I do, I think I talked about it in a video, but I'm happy to give a little breakdown of how I outline my stories. So what I do is a lot of people would probably advise against this, but oh well, I sit down and I dedicate like a couple of full days to this. I will write out a kind of, how do I explain this? A mini paragraph for every chapter of the book that I'm going to write. And I do that in a couple of days. And then when I'm writing the story, I will use that mini paragraph as an idea of the direction that I want that to go in. But here's the thing, when I'm actually writing the story, it's going to change. So the later chapters that I've already written mini paragraphs for, that's going to change because it's just a part of writing. While you're writing the story, it changes a lot. So that's fine. Then I'll go back and I'll edit those mini paragraphs as I go, and it'll change like 100 times. But I need to have a direction when I'm writing before I start writing. I can't just sit down and start writing. I need to know the direction the story's going in at least at the start. Otherwise, I get nothing done. What about the story made you want to write that Descent 7 instead of another fantasy story? It was kind of just getting the idea. It felt so unique to me. Well, I say unique, but it's inspired by a lot of things, obviously. But I don't know. I was just passionate about it, and I was passionate about it kind of in the same way that I was passionate when I very first got the idea for The Architects of the Gifted so many years ago, like 5 years ago now. I just felt the fire of writing, and I mean, I've enjoyed writing the sequels to The Architects of the Gifted, but it's starting to feel a bit more like obligation because I know that story's unfinished and I need to finish it, rather than with Descent 7, I'm just writing it because I want to write it, you know? I'm making it sound like I don't like writing architects. I really do, but I've got a bit of a fire for Descent 7 at the moment, and I wanted to write something different, other than action fantasy. I wanted to write about an adult rather than a teenager for once, because that's something I've never done, and it's kind of fun. It's like taking the barriers down for once. I can really kind of let loose. Did you vote for Suju or not? I think that's a K-pop thing. I don't... I've never gotten into K-pop. I've never tried getting into K-pop, so I would probably get addicted to it. I love musical kind of stuff. It's a running joke on my channel at this point, how into Glee I am, so... Can't help it. It's so good. How do you come up with your story plots? Just again, I don't know. They just come to me. Kind of like dreams. Something I would highly recommend for all writers, if you don't do it already, is keep a dream journal, because you'll be surprised by how many great ideas you have when you wake up first thing in the morning that can make future books. There's nothing quite like the unleashed imagination of your dreams. Obviously, some of it's crap, weird crap, but there's some gems in there sometimes. Yeah, Andrew, you can send me the book. I'm just saying I'm not promising to read it, and I hope that doesn't sound mean or anything. You just need to understand that I get that question a lot. Ever since I hit kind of like 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, at least every couple of days I've got people emailing me to send me books, that's all. So it's nothing personal. No, I've never written fan fiction, but fan fiction is very, very interesting to me. I think I've read a few fan fiction, and I think it's really cool. I've read a lot of Sherlock Holmes fan fiction because, well, I feel like there's a lot of professionally published Sherlock Holmes fan fiction nowadays, but I think that's a cool thing. Sherlock Holmes fan fiction, because there's so many different interpretations and ways that people set up the little mysteries that Sherlock gets himself into. I think I've answered all the questions. I'm sorry if I haven't. Just gonna double check. I'm gonna have a read through the chat here, just try and make sure I got everything. Did I watch the grand final on Saturday? Is that the AFL? Because I did not, but Everyone at work watched it and they were talking about it. I'm not a really sporty guy. I watch a little bit of ice hockey and UFC, so that's about it. Yeah, so that's Descend 7, I guess. I'm still happy to sit around and chat about some other stuff for a while. I've got time, but that is the general idea of Descend 7. Middle-aged man hits rock bottom, has hell, quite literally, knock on his door, and makes him confront events from his past that he has tried to bury. All in all, culminating in him confronting one massive event from his past that kind of shaped how his life has turned out and how the lives of 7 other people turned out. That's kind of where that comes from. Will there be a drunk book review soon? I really want to do another drunk book review. The only problem is it is such a video to make, because I obviously have to get drunk for it, and it's really hard trying to film a video when you're drunk, like getting it all set up and all that kind of stuff. And now I've got a lot of newer equipment than I had back then that is a bit more difficult to set up, but I don't know, maybe. I want to. Last time I did a drunk book review, YouTube kind of I think I got like some kind of strike against it for being inappropriate that I had to contest, just because I was, well, to be fair, I was drinking in it, so. Thanks, Andrew. I did get the email just then. I appreciate that. Did I go to university? I went to the Sunshine Coast uni for a little while there, and then I went to the Sunshine Coast TAFE, which is, I don't know if that's like the community college equivalent, but basically through both of those avenues I did film and television. So when I was younger, what I wanted to do was become a scriptwriter. So I did a diploma in film and television so I could learn about that stuff, but I don't know. I learned through doing that it wasn't really my thing. I needed a bit more freedom, creative freedom, rather than just being limited by what you could physically put on a screen or a stage. Oh, one thing I wanted to have a look at. Did you guys hear that? Is it still Richard Reeds? He changed his. No wait, Richard Reeds is another one. I'm looking at a YouTuber. Sorry, I'm just bringing it up now. That I enjoy. So it's Bookishly Richie now. Sorry, he's changed his channel name a couple of times. I'm just trying to keep up, but Bookishly Richie is bringing out a new book, I believe, soon. He's been dropping a lot of hints about it. I think primarily he writes kind of like middle grade horror, so I'm interested in that. Yeah, I'm just looking at his Twitter now, which is Richard X Denny, and he's got a new book coming out, which is interesting. I would be interested to know if anyone else watching the chat at the moment is excited for Christine or Polar Banana Books' book that is coming out next year, because the cover just got released. It's a cool cover, by the way. Just interested how people feel about that, because here's one thing I've noticed when it comes to booktubers publishing books, and I've said this before as well, is that as a book community, we tend to be a lot more critical of success within our own community, I've found, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, when booktubers put out a book, not necessarily mine, but the bigger booktubers, it feels like it goes under a bit more of a microscope than it would have if they weren't a booktuber. I don't really watch Paula Banana books, not because I have a problem with her or anything like that. I actually think her, Kat, and Jessie are pretty good role models as far as booktube goes. As far as representatives of booktube goes, they're quite professional, and it's pretty obvious that they wouldn't be considered people that parents would have a problem with their kids watching. And I feel like that really is the best representation you can have for a community on YouTube. So I'm cool with that. But I don't watch Paula Banana books, I was saying, because it's just a bit too high energy for me. The only one I really watch out of those three is Jesse the Reader, just because he's a bit more chill. But I don't have a problem with Christine. It's just... Well, it's obvious from watching her videos. She yells a lot, and that's just a bit too much for me. But I respect her. I respect all three of those guys. What's my favorite thing about Brisbane? Jeez. I don't know. I just like the city. Have you guys ever heard of South Bank? It's an area in Brisbane, but it's really beautiful. And a lot of tourists that come here to see that. Because I don't want to brag or anything, but part of Inspector Gadget 2 was filmed in South Bank, so... They filmed some of Thor Ragnarok in Brisbane too, which was cool. When it comes to writing a horrific scene, it is advised to write disgusting things. Absolutely. So, I mean, that's part of writing a psychological horror. It needs to be more than just people chasing you down a corridor kind of thing. It needs to mess with your mind. And I'm pretty confident I can do that with Descent 7. I want it to really be a mind fuck. And it needs to be disgusting, not just on a physical plane, like, blood and all that kind of stuff, but it needs to be disgusting emotionally and psychologically. It needs to make you uncomfortable. It needs to give you the heebie-jeebies, Like I've said it a few times, but I feel like the comparison to Room 1408 by Stephen King is going to be quite strong, especially the movie rather than the book. Well, the short story. The short story was a very short story. And it was good, but I actually think it's one of those instances where the movie was better. Room 1408 with John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson is fantastic. It is one of the best horror films I've ever seen. Well, yeah, psychological horror films I've ever seen, just because when you first watch that movie, especially if you haven't read the short story, it's just... It fucks with your head really, really hard. Is it hard writing an unlikable main character? Yeah, that's one way to put it. I can already imagine people getting pissed off if and when they read the story because of how the main character, at least at the start of the book, treats other people. And I imagine a lot of people are going to ignore the fact that that's the point. He is a bad guy. He is extremely selfish, and it's not like he walks around, beating other people up or anything like that, but he wouldn't do that because it would be a waste of his time. It's selfish even in that. He's just, everything he does has to be about what's going to benefit him. And everything bad that happens to him is always someone else's fault. And then obviously there's the layer of him being surface level homophobic and racist, I guess. It's weird writing about a homophobic racist character because it's not like he thinks bad things about other people because of their race or because of their sexuality, but he tends to, how do I say this? Okay, so I guess that is kind of it. He thinks higher of himself because of who he is, but he doesn't dislike like, so there's a gay character, right? Here's how I'll explain this. There's a gay character, the concierge kid I was talking about before, and he doesn't dislike the character because he's gay, but he thinks higher of himself because Joseph, the main character, thinks higher of himself because he's not, if that makes any sense. I did watch the new It. If I can give a hot take, I liked I liked the new It better than the old one. I didn't. You know what I didn't like about the old It movie is that I'm glad that the new ones are breaking it up in separate films, them being young and old, because in the old film they kind of mashed that together and it did not gel well at all. It was very jarring kind of shift there, and it got really boring really quick for the old film. Sorry if that sorry if that pisses anyone off. I think a story about a serial killer as the protagonist would be interesting. And you got to remember, protagonist is just a main character with a goal throughout the book. For example, in Descent 7, the protagonist's goal is to not die. Yeah, it's to survive through the storm. So you could have a serial killer as the protagonist whose goal might be to kill people. And the antagonist could be a hero who is trying to stop them. So the antagonist is just a character who is trying to stop the protagonist's goal. So you could absolutely have a serial killer as the protagonist and a hero as the antagonist, and that would be an interesting story, I imagine. I feel like I've seen a movie or something like that, but I can't remember what it is. Yeah, it'll absolutely be a satisfying part of the story when, being a shit person catches up with Joseph. But it's also kind of the point of the story to make the audience empathize with him a little bit, because I want you to start the story by thinking, wow, this guy's a real piece of shit. Everything that happens to him, he deserves it. But throughout the story, I'm hoping that the people reading would kind of side with him. Like, I want to be able to write a story where you find yourself siding with someone that you don't necessarily agree with, and you want the person to live even though they're not exactly the kind of person that you think is a good person, Dexter. Obviously, that's... Can't believe that I mind blanked on that. Obviously, Dexter. Thanks for thanks for clarifying that. I feel like an idiot. You know what else is actually pretty good that reminds me of Dexter? Have you seen on Netflix Santa Clarita Diet? Because I really, really like that show, and I really, really like the actor who plays the dad. I think his name's Josh something. Yeah, I love that show. It's really good. The difference in writing a psychological horror to a fantasy is... It's an entirely different world. It's entirely different. I mean, the process is all the same. I do the same outlining process and all that, but just everything about it is different. The biggest difference, and I've said it a few times, is going from a big cast of characters that I need to add depth and complexity to one character, and writing about one character through the course of a full novel that is in one place. Like, he doesn't leave the building, so to speak. Although there will be flashbacks, that kind of stuff, so that makes sense. But it's very different. There's another story I can tell you about. I was writing during NaNoWriMo last year that I completely forgot about until now, because I kind of just abandoned it. I was writing it during NaNoWriMo, and I got stuck, and I just kind of dropped it. I haven't written on it since, which is kind of sad. But it was called the Rat Pack, and then it was going to have like a subtitle, and it was going to be like a series inspired by the nostalgic atmosphere of Stranger Things. That's one I was looking for. It's inspired by Stranger Things, and it's about a group of kids which are a bit older than the Stranger Things kids, but it's based in the 70s rather than the 80s, and it's about a group of kids who kind of stumble upon not the murder itself, but a murderer. They stumble upon a murderer, and then it goes through your kind of classic story of the adults refusing to believe them, and then there's a twist, and it was like a mystery. It was a very, very mystery-based story, and I stopped writing it because I realized that the plot I had originally planned didn't make any sense, and I was racking my brain during NaNoWriMo trying to think of how I was going to make the story make sense, because I really liked it. The characters were really cool, and the nostalgic mood of the story was cool, but I just couldn't figure it out. I've still got it saved. I'm hoping to revisit it one day, but mystery is so hard to write. That's just... I'm literally not on the level of being able to write mystery yet. It's very, very difficult. Easily the most difficult genre, I believe, to write is mystery. Did you watch The Walking Dead Season 8? Yes, I'm up to date on The Walking Dead, and well, it's not a spoiler because it's all over the news and everyone already knows, but Andrew Lincoln is leaving The Walking Dead, which means obviously they're going to, I guess, kill off the character, and I'm already sad about that. I'm preemptively sad. But no spoilers. Let's try not to spoil too much. Comment from Jimmy says, so his narcissism, referring, I'm guessing, to the Descent 7 character, so his narcissism is fueled by him existing within a wrongly perceived type of normality versus outright hatred. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty accurate idea of him. He's just, he's a selfish guy. He's not supremacist in nature. He doesn't believe he deserves to be better than everyone else, but he believes that he's more important than he is, and he feels like if anything bad happens to him, it's because someone wanted something bad to happen to him, and it's never his fault. And yeah, what VN Lee said is true. The protagonist is, by the technical definition, just the character that has a goal throughout the story. So the protagonist can be the bad guy. The protagonist has a goal, the antagonist is trying to stop that goal. So yeah. Silent Hill 4, The Room. Is that a game or is that a movie? Because either way, I haven't seen it. I do like Silent Hill a lot, but haven't seen that one. I guess you could compare it to Silent Hill, because actually that's a really good comparison, Lucy, because you know when the characters get into Silent Hill, so in Silent Hill there's an area called Silent Hill, and it's kind of like when they cross over to there, it's its own self-contained place. Like the outside world can't really affect anything that happens in Silent Hill, and when you're in Silent Hill, you can't really make contact with the outside world. That is the storm and the building that the main character is trapped in my story. So there's a great comparison there. Kind of inspired by Wayward Pines as well, in that claustrophobic setting, except a lot more claustrophobic. Rather than a town, it's a building. If you haven't read Wayward Pines, by the way, you need to read it. It's amazing. Amazing. Easily one of the best series I've ever read in my life. Two comments about Bates Motel. I have watched, I think it was the first season of it, and it wasn't bad. It was just really weird. It was really, really weird to see that old Hitchcock film broken down to an origin story. It kind of, to be honest, it kind of takes away the scariness of Norman Bates, but oh well. It's kind of what they did with like Darth Vader, right? Like everyone thought giving Darth Vader a normal or sad origin story made the character a lot less intimidating. I think that's what happened with Norman Bates, but it's not a bad show. I like the actor. Just reading through the chat for a moment. Sounds like that would present an interesting opportunity for a mental breakdown or a temper tantrum when he gets wrong. Well, he's definitely going to have a mental breakdown at some point in the story because, he's going to realize very quickly that he's not just trapped in a building by a storm with people that at the start he's going to assume are just psychopaths. He's going to realize quite quickly that there is a supernatural element involved, and he is very literally trapped in the building. There's a certain scene in the movie 1408 that inspired kind of the atmosphere of Descent 7, and that is that the scene where John Cusack climbs out the window to basically escape the room that he's trapped in, and he tries to shimmy along to the next room to escape, and he almost makes it to where the next window should be, and then he looks, and there is no window. The whole side of the building is just brick, except for the window for the room that he's trapped in. And that's kind of the mood of the story that I'm writing, is that there's no physical way to escape. Just adding into that an actual storm outside as well, a really, really bad storm. The storm is meant to kind of signify hell closing in on him. By the end of the story, the storm is just going to be literally picking the building apart. So Silent Hill 4: The Room is a game set in an apartment in Silent Hill. Damn it. I hope that's not too similar to the story I'm writing. I have to look this up now because now I'm worried. Because that sounds... Silent Hill set in an apartment is kind of how I would describe the story I'm writing, so... Oops. Let's check this. Yeah, okay, I think it's similar, but... Nah, still very different. Thank God. There is nothing worse than coming up with a great idea for a story and then realizing that it might be more inspired than you thought by something that you've never even heard of, and everyone's like, oh, you copied, and you're like, well, no, I had never heard of it, actually. Hi, Peter. You're up very late. Obviously, I'm up late too, so I shouldn't say anything. You should write it, Andret. A horror book about the villain. I think that has a lot of potential to be interesting. If you write a book about a villain, right, so let's say a serial killer, I think one of the best things you could tap into is exactly why they do the things that they do. And the only thing I would say in doing that is, God, make sure you do your research, because I'm telling you right now, if you write a book about a serial killer who, well, if it is a serial killer, they're going to have some kind of disorder. I don't think it's physically possible to be a compulsive murderer and not have some kind of defect mentally. So you're going to be writing about someone who is mentally defected or defective. So make sure you do your research, because if you don't, people are going to just tear you apart for it. People can be very, very critical, which is, it's fair, I guess, but, Wayward Pines is a book and a TV show, and, The TV show is very different from the book, though. Like, at the start, it's almost scene for scene with the book, which was really cool to see. Like, I read the books and then I watched Wayward Pines TV show, and it was really cool to see it translated onto the screen, but it changes a lot. A lot. I would highly recommend reading the books. Even if you've seen the show, you can read the books and still get a good number of surprises. So good. So good. How do I stay focused on one story rather than being tempted to start or continue something else? I'm not a good person to answer that, because the book I'm talking about right now is a distraction from the third Architects of the Gifted story, so I don't really... I'm not that great at staying focused on one story, obviously. Really, it just comes down to how passionate you are about what you're writing, I guess. I'm writing a book right now. It is about 15 adventurers on a quest to steal the Blue Oracle from a giant lizard king. I based my story off of Jules Verne's books. 15 characters. That's going to be a challenge, but a good challenge. I hope that's going well. Let me tell you right now, Jules Verne is fantastic. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is probably one of... I haven't read a whole lot of classic literature, but that is one of the ones I've read, and I picked up Around the World in 80 Days, and I haven't read it yet, but I do really enjoy Jules Verne. He is, even translated from French, Jules is one of the first people to really capture the modern epic fantasy in a really engaging way. Well, to the best of my knowledge anyway. Obviously, there's probably lots of people like him, but when you think about how long ago he wrote those books, it feels very modern and very interesting. Was I inspired by J.G. Ballard's High Rise? I've never heard of J.G. Ballard's High Rise, but I'm going to look it up right now. Is that a book? Let's see. High Rise, the novel, is the disintegration of a luxury high-rise building as its affluent residents gradually descend into violent chaos. That sounds extremely similar to what I'm writing. Just with more characters, obviously, rather than just being one character and a bunch of neighbors that are, I guess, possessed. It sounds like it's about a cast of characters. That sounds really cool. I'm going to shelf that because I think that's a movie as well, and that sounds like it would be a really cool movie. No? No, it's just a book. Alright, I'm still going to add that to my wish list because that sounds really interesting. That might actually... I actually probably should read the High Rise book because it might give me some indication of stuff I don't want to copy, because I didn't realize how many similar things there were to this, but obviously I don't want to copy someone else, so I might read that. Thanks for pointing that out, Jimmy. Am I intending to make The Architects a movie? Jeez, I wish I had the resources. If I was to make The Architects of the Gifted into a movie, I think I would change a lot though, especially with the first story. I wrote the first, or I came up with the idea for the first story when I was like 19, and God, there was so much I would change, but I'm trying not to regret it because I'm still happy with it, but there's just so much I would change. Have I ever written more than one book at a time? No, I don't think I could. I'm not that skilled. Cat just puked in the doorway. Gotta love cats. Hey, Steve. Came at the perfect time, Steve, because in this whole like hour-long stream so far, that is the first time we have mentioned any classic literature. It's like summoning Steve Donahue, actually. You just mention a classic artist. Jules Verne. I'm such a basic bitch when it comes to classic literature. Like, I'll pretend like I'm very learned and educated when it comes to like classic lit, but I'm really not. I've read like, like I said, the basic bitch ones, like a lot of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and years and years ago I read The Three Musketeers. Who's it by? I'm drawing a blank, but I read that one, which I really, really liked. The Musketeers story is very, very cool, especially for a young boy to read. I think if you have a son, or if you are a young boy, Three Musketeers is a classic lit story that you could easily get into. Easily. Same with Sherlock Holmes, obviously. Someone's behind you. Don't say that, Jesus. I just watched that movie the other day about like people who they're in like a Skype conversation, they're getting picked off one by one, and they keep seeing someone in the other person behind the other person's thing. Just fuck off, don't say that. Hi from the UK. I would hope you're a bookworm. Why else would you be watching a Booktube channel? Just reading through the chat. How do you come up with a title? That's a good question. I don't know. Like, there's so many different ways of coming up with a title, and there's so many ways to do it wrong. Like, you have stories that are really on the nose with it, like, what's the best way to do an example? So, with TV shows, let's just say Family Guy, because they had a really meta joke about it. But in TV shows, when inexplicably someone will say the name of the TV show for no real reason, like in an episode of Family Guy, I think it's a police officer pulls over Peter or whatever, and he's like, I don't like people like you, I'm a real family guy, and they all look at the camera, and that's the joke. I feel like there's a lot of books that are like that, where they'll just take a snippet from the story and make it the title, and it doesn't really make sense. But there's a lot of different examples, and I mean, obviously, The Architects of the Gifted, I called it that because the main characters are considered not really a race, but they're considered something called the Gifted, and they were created by the architects. So I don't know, it just felt like it rolled off the tongue well. And Descend 7, I don't know. So Descend 7 is actually a bit easier to tell you about when it comes to titling it, because I wanted it to be clear in the title that this is someone, it needed to basically have something to do with falling or descending, or basically just going down. Like, you are dropping below the plane of what is normal. So that's how I got Descend. And then 7 is just because Joseph Ridley is descending through the 7 layers of hell. So that's it. But that's a working title, so I don't know. Have you ever read The Night Circus? I haven't. Very cool cover, though, for that book. Very cool cover. I think Clara was trying to get me to read it at one point. Have you ever read Tom Sawyer? I have not, but I've seen well and truly enough Tom Sawyer references and parody and satire to know what Tom Sawyer is. Alexandre Dumas, that's it. That's who I was thinking of, wrote The Three Musketeers. Really great. I think he was French as well. a lot of classic French literature. It's very good adventure. Tom Sawyer, was it Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn? One of those stories I know is infamous for being, for basically having having at least a part of the story where I think it was Huckleberry Finn traveling with an African American who was a runaway slave, and I think it was controversial at the time, and would be controversial if it was released today, maybe. But it was controversial, I believe, because of the use of the N-word, but not for the same reasons as it would be today. I don't know. I'm just talking crap at this point. The book I'm writing right now is based off my middle school journaling. It's basically just my younger self venting onto the pages, but most of the scenes happened in real life, so I'm just adding to the plot. That's fine. I think that's a good starting point for any writer, is to write from experience. That is the best way to grease the wheels or flex the writing muscles, is to write about what you know. And if what you know is your own experiences, which makes sense, then that's a really great place to start. Especially if you've had an exciting life. Other people might want to hear about it. I am 25 now, so I got the idea for the Architects of the Gifted a very long time ago, like 5 or 6 years. I never read the book, but I grew up on the Tim Curry Disney one. I think... Still talking about Tom Sawyer? Don't know. Huckleberry Finn and Jim. That's it. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, I imagine Steve probably knows this way better than I would, but I think that Huckleberry Finn story was big at the time because it had a African American as one of the main characters. I'm not too sure. I just know that every time I've seen it brought up in discussion, it's had the word controversy kind of attached to it. But I don't think it's looked back on negatively. I think the author did it... Again, I haven't read it, but when I hear people talk about that story, even people who are quite liberal, they don't seem like they dislike that story for what it was. So I feel like it had a good message, maybe. I think at the time, maybe it was odd to write about a white kid and an African American man traveling together and becoming friends, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, Alexander Dumas, he was part black as well, that's true. Yeah, Steve, I am quite... Well, I say I'm writing a book, but that's probably very generous of me because I'm writing it in very small segments at very distant intervals. I need to stop fart-arsing around. I need to do it. I keep saying, and I keep pushing the date. And I keep doing all the stuff that I tell people not to do in my writing tip videos. I need to stop procrastinating and write the damn thing. I have no excuse not to. But yeah, as far as time goes, I'm pretty busy all the time. I have a full-time job, which is 40 hours a week, so that's usually from like 4 p.m. to midnight every day. That's why I'm up this late now, because this is my sleeping pattern. But it's 4 to 12 every day. So I usually wake up about 9. I try to keep fit, so I go to the gym. I'm trying to obviously read, trying to learn the stupid piano, trying to have a social life. It's really hard. And obviously Booktube as well, which takes like a full day easily to make a couple of videos. filming and editing and all that, I don't think people realize how long it actually takes me. It takes me like 4 or 5 hours at least. So, comment from Jocelyn about Huckleberry Finn. I'm actually really interested to talk about this. So, Mark Twain said after that he used the word for shock value and to show the ugliness of it being used. That's interesting. Yeah, okay. I could see that. I will be doing NaNoWriMo this year, but more importantly this year, rather than NaNoWriMo, I'll be doing Movember again, which is something I'm very passionate about. Not growing a mustache. Not very passionate about that. I am very passionate about raising money for that foundation, for the Movember Foundation, which helps to raise money and awareness for prostate cancer and suicide prevention, specifically within males, because obviously the suicide rate and prostate cancer rate is astronomically higher in males, but I mean, they support everyone, so it's not like it's only a dude thing, but that's why it's Movember. So yeah, the Huckleberry Finn thing was a different time with different people. Yeah, that's true, and I think that, I guess in a way that makes it even more cool what Mark Twain did. I'm just going off what Jocelyn's telling me here. It seems like she knows her stuff. But I guess Mark Twain used the word in the narrative of the Huckleberry Finn story to shame it, to shame the word itself, which in that time was, I guess it would have been a brave move because of how aggressively extreme everyone was about that whole thing. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need to tell you about what happened in American history. The N-word in my language is, well, should I say it, even if it's in another language? The N-word in my language is, and to us is free to say because we have no black people here. Okay. A full-time job reading a social life booktube and hanging out with famous authors. Yeah, that one time. Veronica, can I just take a moment to say, Veronica Roth is so cool. Like, I like Divergent, but it's by no means my favorite series, or like my favorite YA series, or even my favorite YA dystopian series. But she is so cool. Such, like, I just admire her as a woman, and like as a young woman especially, because she's quite young and she's very, very successful, but she's just, yeah, her and her husband both very cool people, very modest. And I mean, within a couple of minutes of meeting them, no matter how much I tried to hide it, I was obviously quite nervous. Mostly nervous about the fact that I would be interviewing Veronica Roth in front of 300 high school students for 45 minutes, which is quite a long time for an interview. And she noticed I was nervous straight away, so I was just like, fuck it. And I told her why I was nervous. And she kind of took the reins on that during the interview itself. I think she purposely elaborated more than she needed to on every question just to drag the time out, because she could see that I was worried I would run out of questions. She's just, yeah, great person. How long have I been streaming? Jesus. Wow, an hour and 20 minutes. I'll give it like another 10 minutes and then I might wrap it up. Thanks, guys. Ever read the Chronicles of Narnia or Lord of the Rings? Have I read Lord of the Rings? Come on. Of course I have. I read Chronicles of Narnia when I was younger, but I didn't really get into it. Lord of the Rings, however, I'm very proud of a video I did a little while ago that I put a portion of up on my Twitter like a day or two ago. I did a kind of video love letter to the Lord of the Rings series, specifically the films rather than the books. But I made a video where it was just clips from Lord of the Rings with some music and me talking about why Lord of the Rings it changed my life, and it did. Reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings in the Middle-earth series did change my life, and seeing the movies, it had a very profound impact on my life. So yes, short answer is yes, I've read Lord of the Rings. Even the celebrity. Alright, I'm probably going to move on from the conversation of how appropriate it is to use the N-word in your writing, because that is not for me to really say. I mean, that's a whole other conversation that I would refuse to have without having input from someone who should have input. Am I going to collab with Divya G? I wish. She is fantastic, right? I've noticed Divya G, right? So she's a great channel. I don't know if you'd say Booktube channel anymore, because she just kind of does like everything, but she's hilarious. And every time I comment on her videos, I just post a comment that I think is funny. The comments on her videos from me get more likes than my fucking videos do on my channel. Can you believe that? How ridiculous is that? I mean, it's awesome. It's ridiculous. I would love to collab with Divya G. I think we've got very similar sense of humors. Very similar sense of humor, sorry. My spy in the room reported that if she hadn't known that this was your first author interview in front of the audience, she'd have guessed you did it for a living. You flatter me, Steve. Although, in this instance, I'm going to toot my horn. I think I did very well in that interview. It's like... It's a perfect example of, no matter how anxious you are for something, sometimes you just have to kind of dive in. And I realize social anxiety is like a lot more crippling for some people rather than others, but I feel like everyone who deals with anxiety is going to, like everyone who deals with anxiety on every level is going to assume that they simply cannot do the thing that they're anxious about. Sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to do it. I was extremely anxious for the interview because I just kept telling myself, I'm no matter how many questions I write, I'm going to fly through them. I'm going to sit there with nothing to say, looking like an idiot in front of all these people, in front of world-famous Veronica Roth, in front of the entire HarperCollins team. I'm going to look like an idiot. And as soon as I got on the stage, as soon as I started talking to Veronica in front of, all those kids, I was just in the zone. It was easy. Easy. It was like I was making a Booktube video, actually. It was just, yeah. It was great. Sometimes you just have to do it. Hey, Phil. I'm not gonna go back and, explain the book all over again, although I would love to. It's just, I imagine most of the people here have heard me talk about it enough by now. I'd spent like half an hour going on and on about it, but it's a great thing about YouTube. You can just scrub that little thing back, watch from the start, if you want to. Hi to the new people that just joined the chat. Yeah, again, you might just have to rewatch the start of the video when you get a moment, if you want to see what the book's about, because I talked about it quite a lot. What's the deal with NaNoWriMo? It's just great. NaNoWriMo's fantastic. It's an odd thing, I guess, from the outside if you're watching people get excited about NaNoWriMo, but NaNoWriMo is an excuse for a lot of people who deal with writer's block, and a lot of people who, the type of people who say, I want to write, but I wouldn't know where to start. All of those kinds of people who want to write or want to finish writing, but they just procrastinate, they just never get it done. NaNoWriMo is a community advantage, community event, a community opportunity to do that, because it's not just you knuckling down and doing it. You're doing it with a bunch of people online as well, maybe a bunch of friends. You can add friends through the NaNoWriMo website. You can see how much writing your friends are doing. It's a procrastination killer, is what I like to say. So it's fantastic. It's really great. Yeah, I would love to collab with DivyaG, but I don't know. I don't really ask a lot of people for collabs, especially bigger channels, because I always feel like they're going to think that I'm just trying to leech subscribers, which I'm not. There are naked men on the street out my window? Where do you live? Is that normal? Can you give me advice on marketing my book on Amazon, where I published the book? Marketing is very, very tricky. I mean, you could quite literally pay for an ad on Facebook, which works. It definitely works. When I first put out my first book, I had it out for free, to be fair, but I did a Facebook ad and it got it a lot of attention. So it just comes down to whether you have a platform or not. Obviously, I've got my Booktube channel. That's my platform. So if I was to ever want to sell something or market something, this is the first place I would do it, and I'm lucky enough to have that. But if you don't have a platform, which is fine, you don't need to have a YouTube channel or a pop-in social media or anything like that, I would probably try and find someone who does, who would be willing to do it for you, maybe. Quite simply, you just need to get it in front of as many eyes as possible. So there's this thing called the spaghetti effect, and it applies to a lot of things in life. A lot of guys will tell you that the spaghetti effect applies to dating, and it's that you grab a fistful of spaghetti, right? And you chuck it at the wall. Most of the spaghetti is going to fall off, but some of it's going to stick, and that's the principle here. It's like, for dating, the idea is if you date a lot of girls, a lot of it's not going to work out, but some of it's going to stick, and eventually you'll end up with hopefully one really great strand of spaghetti. Or for marketing your book, you just want to get it in front of as many eyes as possible, no matter how you can do it, because if you get it in front of those eyes, you throw that spaghetti at the wall, some of it's going to stick. Some people are going to want to read your book, and then they might tell their friends about it, etc., etc. Thanks, Gavin. I hope I become a big success too. I don't know. I would always be happy to stick with a day job. I mean, it would be a dream come true to make enough money off of writing that I wouldn't have to. But I realize that that's quite unrealistic, and that's not me lacking self-confidence. That's just reality of the situation, is that a lot of the writers that you enjoy probably would have day jobs. It's not a very profitable business. Unless you are someone like Veronica Roth or Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, obviously. You're not really going to get rich off of it. At best, you'll be comfortable, probably. So yeah, I'm always happy to hold down a day job. I just want people to enjoy what I create, I guess. If I can make some money, that would be nice too. God, I wasn't even going to do this stream tonight. I'm really glad I did. So thanks to everyone who is currently in the stream. I really appreciate it. Hope you'll forgive me while I just very quickly check my Twitter. Okay. Sorry about that. So I feel like I might tell you what I've got going on going forward on the channel. So normally I have 3 videos prepared for the next week on YouTube, but I've been pretty slack lately, obviously, but I do have a video scheduled for maybe not tomorrow, but the day after. But see you, Vian. But basically, I'm doing a video that is going to be really good for people like Endrit who are looking into self-publishing, and it is, I don't know if you've seen my video called My Self-Publishing Experience, but it's kind of blown up recently, and I think the reason that is because I go through the steps of how I self-published my book, and a lot of the comments I got on that video is that it's helpful for people to know what it is they should be doing. But really that video is just me talking about what I did, and that was me talking about what I did the first time, so there's a lot of stuff in that I probably would have changed. So what I did was today, let me see if I can actually show you this. I think this is the one. Oh. Okay. No, that's not going to work. I want to show you I was going to show you the thumbnail, but it doesn't really matter. So I filmed a video today, which is called Step-by-Step Guide to Self-Publishing. That's what it's called, right? And it goes through 13 steps on how to self-publish your book. Quite literally 13 really easy steps in detail. It's like a 12-minute video. Goes through, tells you absolutely everything from the start. So step 1 is the idea. The last step, step 13, is marketing your book going forward in the future. Everything in between. It explains what you need to do, places that you can do it, etc., etc. And that's it. Let me see if I can yeah, sorry. I was going to show you the thumbnail because I think it looks cool, but it really doesn't matter. Yeah, a lot of people are hopping off the chat now, which is understandable. We've been here for like over an hour, which I'm very appreciative of, so thank you guys. But we're about the hour-and-a-half mark, which I think is a really good place to leave it. And yeah, this has been extremely fun. I had a lot of fun. I'm hoping to do this a lot more as well. So I mean, it's 1:30 a.m. at the moment, but when I wake up, I might leave a comment on this video with time cards to everything we talked about in the video, so that if you want to come back and watch this later on, hopefully you can go down to the comments and there will be little timestamps that you can click that will take you to parts in the video that'll tell you exactly what that part in the video is talking about. But I think I'm overtired at this point, just kind of rambling. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining the stream. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for letting me talk about my book. I really, really, really appreciate it. I really do. Having people, even one person, be interested in something that you're working on creatively is a fantastic feeling. So having all of you people actively ask me questions about it is just, it makes me feel really good. That's what I'm saying. So thank you. I will say hi to Bonnie. And if I can, I'll just say as a sign off, if you haven't already, subscribed to the channel, because I do a hell of a lot of writing tip videos, and I've got a bunch of playlists on my channel for writing tips, all that kind of stuff that you can check out. Book videos, everything. Just yeah. Follow me on Twitter if you want to, because that's where I'm most active. That's where I pretty much answer responses pretty quickly. And you can follow me on Instagram as well, which is at cam_wolfshot, which is, it's not like a bookstagram, it's quite literally, I just put a random photo up on there like every couple of days of just something. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it. Just the last couple of questions quickly as well. Are you using any third-party software to live stream? I am. I'm using OBS, which was a bit tricky to set up, but if you watch a YouTube tutorial, it's easy. And OBS lets me kind of switch between different stages. They're called stages, where I can have like a window open as well and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, OBS. If you're looking into live streaming, OBS is the best way to go. It's free. And thank you for everything, you are my Jesus. Even though I'm Muslim. That's really kind of you, thank you. Alright, that's it. Done rambling. Thanks guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.